Hi again. Welcome to Pearl Magazine. A growing number of educators believe students should aim for knowledge, not scores. Many political leaders seem to agree. With the right talent, an economy can remain internationally competitive. In the third installment of our four-part series on the Hong Kong SAR's 25th anniversary, we examine if a series of education reforms have created the right conditions for students to become the future pillars of our society. Since Hong Kong's handover in 1997, the education sector has been subjected to a series of reforms, starting with the medium of instruction policy.
主在香港嘅未來，學校更廣泛使用母語教學，會有助提高非語文學科同埋教學嘅水平。
Mother tongue education was implemented in 1998. The majority of public sector secondary schools had to switch to Chinese to teach subjects other than English. Only 114 secondary schools, about 20% of all secondary schools in Hong Kong, could continue using English as the medium of instruction. Secondary schools were categorized into English or Chinese medium of instruction schools. This policy was criticized as labeling.
即係英語教學咧，你唔好當係一個獎勵；母語教學咧，你唔好當一個懲罰。
通常自己爹哋媽咪都想自己入返間英文中學嘅咯，好多同學都係咯。
你政府咁樣搞法，你唔係全部推行，而係某啲你分咗級啊，變咗我哋係二等學校啊，人哋係第一等，我哋根本唔應該咁樣分級。
Actually, mother tongue education is the norm in most countries, with few exceptions. That's why it's quite logical to adopt it. A student's standard of English has not reached that level. It's not effective to learn science and knowledge by using a language that you're not so good at. But you know that Hong Kong society is complex. When it was first implemented, many people disagreed with it. Many schools and parents disagreed with it.
10 years after the introduction of mother tongue education, the government did some fine-tuning. It scrapped classifications of EMI and CMI schools. Schools were given flexibility to adopt the medium of instruction according to their circumstances. In 2000, the Education Commission published the reform proposals for the education system in Hong Kong. It proposed a string of reforms in areas like curricula, assessments, and school place allocation systems.
We wanted students to have broader knowledge, be more active, and have better analytical thinking. However, Hong Kong's education system might not be able to keep up, so it had to be changed. The reforms were holistic and covered the academic structure and examination system. In my time, we had to study 10 subjects, but this was reduced later.
But the waves of education reforms piled up stresses on students as well as on teachers and schools. The language proficiency assessment for teachers has been conducted since 2001. In the first year, 70% of teachers failed the English writing test. Dwindling numbers of children forced the closures of primary and secondary schools. Since the handover, several tertiary institutions in Hong Kong have been redesignated as universities. Since 1997, the number of universities has jumped from 7 to 11. To allow more secondary school graduates access to higher education, associate degrees were introduced in 2000. The aim was to increase the number of people being admitted to universities to 60% within 10 years. But associate degrees have struggled with recognition.
唔知係咪副學士呢一個銜即係稱謂咧，就令到大家以為咧就係半個學士，所以就要讀埋嗰半個。其實出嚟揾工作咧，其實都係一個出路嚟嘅。
副
Associate degrees are freaks. It's a good plan that wasn't well executed. People get the impression associate degrees offer no future, but just an opportunity to enter university. But if you receive professional training under associate degrees, it's a good thing. Hong Kong needs talents at different levels, but it was clumsily handled.
The next idea from the government was to start subsidizing kindergarten education through a voucher scheme in the 2007-2008 school year. Free education was later extended from 9 years to 12 years. The new 3-3-4 academic structure began in the 2009-2010 school year. The old structure of 2 years of senior secondary and 2 years of sixth form was replaced by 3 years of senior secondary. 3 years of university became 4 years. Students no longer had to sit for the Certificate of Education and the A-level examination to enter university. They were replaced by the Diploma of Secondary Education examination.
At the time, it was thought that 3 years of university was too short, and the pressure on Form 6 and 7 students was too great. We wanted to get rid of unnecessary examination pressure. Why would we need 2 public exams? 1 would be enough.
Under the 3-3-4 academic structure, students were required to study 4 compulsory core subjects, including Chinese and English languages, mathematics and liberal studies, and choose 2 to 3 electives from arts or sciences. The first DSE was held in 2012. The grades 3-3-2-2 for the core subjects were the minimum university entry requirement.
Students focus on just these 4 subjects and try to get the best grades. Sciences are usually harder and fewer would choose them. That's why the education in science and mathematics have fallen behind. Although there's an additional year of university, it may not be able to make up for their bad habits of biased learning in high school. If they enter the Faculty of Engineering without having learned calculus, how do we teach them? My conclusion is universities must change their admission requirements.
Among the 4 new senior secondary core subjects, liberal studies attracted the most attention. The curriculum consisted of 6 modules, including Hong Kong Today, Modern China, Globalization, and Public Health. Could students acquire all-round knowledge by exploring these different issues?
In the beginning, liberal studies wasn't called liberal studies. It was an integrated subject combining arts and sciences. But after long discussions, it was changed to liberal studies. There was a lot of debate about how to teach liberal studies later on. One argument was that liberal studies was equivalent to critical thinking. That is, it would merely train you in thinking rather than teach you knowledge. I was very much against it at the time. That's why one could say that liberal studies became gradually deviated from the original idea of combining arts and sciences.
During the anti-extradition movement in 2019, protesters stormed the Legislative Council building. Later, Teng Chi-hua, the vice chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference and former chief executive, claimed the liberal studies education introduced during his term was a total failure, blaming it for leading young people astray. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said the deviation must be rectified.
所謂異化嘅問題或者教育出咗咩問題呢？其實大家都睇到嘅，即係咁細嘅學生，即係中小學生。 竟然會係冇咗守法意識。咁我唔係話將所有嘅問題擺咗係通識科，但係呢個通識科畢竟咧係引起咗社會好大嘅爭議。咁所以我哋必須要對通識教育咧進行一定嘅改革。
Some mainstream newspapers are more radical. That's why, if students discuss the comments in these newspapers and treat them as facts, the result would not be very satisfactory. I'm not surprised if some people think that this has made students' views more radical. It has deviated and become a subject based mainly on current affairs and lacking very clear teaching materials.
The liberal studies subject was later revised to citizenship and social development in 2021. The three main themes of the curriculum are Hong Kong, our country, and the contemporary world. It is only 2 grades in the DSE, attained or unattained.
已經有人開始喺説講話，我哋係將佢變咗做一個國教科，我哋冇咁嘅意圖，我哋仍然係以嗰個課程嘅宗旨同目標咧，作為我哋一個主要嘅考慮。
Changing it into citizenship and social development is, I think, an improvement. The subject is now more beneficial to the development of students. The holistic education reforms involved a lot of reforms. Because they were implemented in many areas, as a result, they put too much pressure on schools, and some of them weren't very successful. As for the academic structure, I think the 3x3x4 structure was an overall success.
Since the handover, Hong Kong has experienced 2 epidemics of the century, resulting in large-scale class cancellations. During the 2003 SARS epidemic, schools were closed for more than 50 days. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, schools have been closed several times and replaced by online classes. It's become a massive challenge for the education sector. Hong Kong must nurture future talent to stay competitive, but since the handover to China, has Hong Kong accomplished this goal? National education and opportunities in the Greater Bay Area when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Pearl Magazine. From national education to integrating into the Greater Bay Area, Hong Kong has aimed to strike a balance between the mainland's political and economic interests and our city's own. But as years of tensions and occasional unrest have revealed, that's much easier said than done. In 2012, the moral and national education subject triggered social backlash. The Education Bureau planned to make this subject compulsory, but many accused it of brainwashing.
呢個科目呢並唔係一屆政府要突然呢係強加強推嘅一個科目嚟嘅，更加唔係外界形容嘅新政府嘅政治任務。
1 month later, the government withdrew the course guidelines.
There have always been different understandings of national identity in society. Some people agree with it, while others are more resistant. National education should have been gradually implemented after the handover, but it wasn't. By 2012, it was already more than 10 years after the handover. National education was set up to be implemented, and the Education Bureau tried to implement it, but it was withdrawn in the end. That was a great pity.
From the Occupy movement in 2014 to the anti-extradition protests in 2019, society became increasingly divided. Soon, there were violent clashes on university campuses.
Due to various reasons in society and the influence or even incitement of many people, students became too radical, even turned violent in the later stage. I made it plain to the students. I'm all for it if you care about society and participate in social movements. But first, you have to be peaceful. If you adopt non-peaceful or even violent methods, I would definitely oppose it.
After the National Security Law was enacted, the Education Bureau announced the curriculum framework of national security education. National security lessons are embedded in 15 subjects in primary and secondary schools. They are set to be implemented in the 2022-2023 school year. Meanwhile, the impact of the exodus from Hong Kong is becoming more evident on the education sector. Education Bureau figures from the 2020-2021 school year show primary and secondary schools hemorrhaged more than 15,000 students, while teacher dropout rates from public sector schools and direct subsidy scheme schools soared to a record high.
Even if we see some people emigrating now, they're still the minority. It's true that we have had some brain drain, but it's a matter of opinion how bad it is. For instance, there was a serious brain drain in the 80s and early 90s in Hong Kong, but there were also those who had returned. You don't know what the future will be like.
Since the handover, Hong Kong has trained local talent while also attracting international professionals. In the admission scheme for mainland talents and professionals launched in 2003, applicants are accepted in all professions with no quotas. Under the Quality Migrant Admissions Scheme introduced in 2006, more than 9,000 people have been admitted. 90% of them are from the mainland, while nearly half work in the financial and IT sectors.
香港吸引人才咧，的確我哋需要不同嘅地方，喺外邊咧係輸入一啲。
Hong Kong needs to attract talents from different places and import some professionals, but unfortunately, property prices are too high. Many arrivals cannot afford the rent.
所以科學園咁講咧，佢都要自己起啲。
Even the Hong Kong Science Park had to build some cheap and small inner cell units to house them.
依家要做嘅就係加強對科技發展嘅支援，盡量匯聚優秀嘅人、科技同埋創業投資嘅人才。
Hong Kong's economy has always relied heavily on the financial industry. Since the handover, Hong Kong attempted to push for economic restructuring and develop the innovation and technology industries. Cyberport and the Science Park and the establishment of the Innovation and Technology Fund were all promoted through these policies.
Mr. Tong was far-sighted. The establishment of the Science Park and the Cyberport laid a very good foundation. In his plan, the aim was to create the hardware first before finding the talent.
我提出發展6項優勢產業，正係金融海嘯引發嘅社會反思，明白到經濟唔能夠單靠金融業，而要走向多元化。
A policy address in 2009 proposed developing the 6 industries, including the cultural and creative industries, medical services, education services, innovation and technology, testing and certification services, and environmental industries. But from 2008 to 2012, the I&T industry's share of GDP only increased by an anemic 0.1%.
When the proposal concerning the 6 industries was put forward, it wasn't too comprehensive or concrete. In addition, with changes in Hong Kong's political situation later on, the SAR government seemed to have lost its focus. That's why after the 6 industries were proposed, there was not much follow-up work. That's a bit unfortunate.
我係準備咧，希望咧可以幫助香港係全世界嗰個創新科技嘅發展上咧，可以得到一杯羹，同埋令到我哋咧可以做到我哋嘅超級聯繫人。
The Innovation and Technology Bureau was set up in 2015 to oversee I&T policies. The total number of startups increased to about 3,800 in 7 years.
Our scientific research has yielded great results during the past 30 years or so. There's no reason not to do it. That's why it was necessary to set up the ITB. After it was set up, the ITB has done a great deal of work.
Since 2017, more than $130 billion has been injected into innovation and technology. This year, the ratio of gross domestic expenditure of R&D to GDP increased to 0.99%.
I think 1% is not too low. The support comes mainly from the government, with little support from the industry. But is it enough? Of course, the higher the better. It can be increased to 1.5%. The recent two governments have spent a lot on technological development, but we're still far behind the investment by our neighbors.
Hong Kong currently has 5 universities that rank in the top 100 universities of the world, with a solid presence in scientific research. In addition, scientific research institutes from several Hong Kong universities have been approved by the Ministry of Science and Technology to set up 16 state key laboratories in Hong Kong. Covering various technological fields, they foster research collaboration between Hong Kong and the mainland.
Hong Kong has top-quality academic research and scientific research. Their research standard is world-class. However, in terms of industrial production, we're still some way from achieving economic results.
To promote global research collaboration, the government established the Inno-Hong Kong clusters at the Science Park in 2021. 28 research laboratories have been admitted, involving top international universities and research institutions and local universities to research health sciences, artificial intelligence and robotic technologies.
我知道唔少生命健康初創或者大型企業睇準香港喺呢一方面嘅優勢同埋大灣區市場嘅潛力，新田科技城將可以為相關嘅科研同埋先進製造業提供土地。
The 2021 policy address proposed developing the Northern Metropolis and consolidating the Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park and the areas around the Lak Ma Chau Santin to form the Santin Technopole. It will provide about 240 hectares of land for INT-related uses. Together with the Shenzhen INT Zone, it will form the Shenzhen-Hong Kong INT Cooperation Zone to promote INT development.
The SAR has limited economic resources. If you want to do the most cutting-edge technological research, you have to work with the mainland. Cooperation or exchange of talent is very important.
The National 14th Five-Year Plan supports Hong Kong's development into an international INT hub and includes the Shenzhen-Hong Kong Loop as a major platform for cooperation in the GBA for the first time. For a spot on the big stage, Hong Kong needs an education system to train local talent, as well as attract international professionals to stay competitive.
Let's strive to take advantage of the precious opportunity of the GBA. Let's strive to better integrate Hong Kong into the country's development. On the vast stage of the country, we should have scope to play to our strengths. I'm confident about this.
That's Pearl Magazine for this week. Join us again, same time next time. Good night.